Hello, it's Webbs here again with another Hearthstone Deck video. This time it'll be a miracle if the opponent can stop the bleeding from our cards. This deck is a miracle style deck where you focus on drawing most of your cards through the combination of sketchy information, loan shark, and a bunch of low cost spells in order to trigger gadgets and auctioneer. So you can easily trigger your Garrotes in the deck and thus doing a bunch of face damage within one turn. The deck overall is relatively difficult to play. However, the mulligans for early game are easy to understand, as there are only two cards that you want to keep in your open hand, no matter what. These two cards being Effective Octobot and Sketchy Information, or some type of draw power to cycle through your deck quicker, thus getting to your combo pieces. Now, with that being said, let's get into the games. Alright, time to get into game 1 against Mage. Here I'm just going to kill the Swindle. And we draw back into a Garrote, which is fine, but we don't really need it this early on. And it's Quest Mage, to no one's surprise. I was really enjoying myself when I kept running to Elemental Mage, since it was a different mage deck than normal. But I guess we're not doing that anymore. Drawing into a sketchy information is great for turn 3. For this matchup, we're actually pretty strong just because of the fact that we don't play a lot of minions until we burst down the opponent in one turn. We can use the Octobot and the Backstab in order to discount our entire hand if we want to. And we draw into a second sketchy information. I should have honestly probably kept that hand instead of using that. Since I usually always prefer to use the Backstabs over the Ethereals when I know they're going to probably kill the Ethereal, like they just did. Here we'll just draw one of our loan sharks. And then draw two more minions. And we get our second augment. And our gadgets and auctioneer, which is also great. The only thing that would be bad to top deck right now would be a second Garrote, since we're going to burn it no matter what card it is. That is one issue with this variant of the deck, is there's a lot of times where you just have your hand completely clogged up with coins or zero cost spells. However, I still enjoyed this over using field contact in order to draw a bunch of cards using one cost Battlecry units. So we burn the auctioneer. That's fine since we already have one in our hand. I honestly probably shouldn't have even attacked because there was a high likelihood that was going to be a Ice Barrier, and I was just not really paying that much attention, I guess. We're going to play the Lone Shark and a Backstab in order to kill their minion. We don't want them to draw extra cards if we can stop it. We're going to draw into our second Lone Shark and get a bunch of more coins. Which again is probably the more risky play. They're going to trade in their Fire Cell. use their ignite. And then devolve our shark. I don't know who the hell ever runs devolving missiles right now, but I guess this is the one mage that does. I mean, I guess it makes sense if they're running into a bunch of like hand buff decks or some other deck that runs a bunch of big minions that they can easily cheat out. So here I'm trying to think if I want to do my combo this turn or wait till next turn. And here I'm just going to combo out. Honestly, I probably should have played the Ethereal before trying to draw into an Octobot, but this works out too. We can now bounce back the Ethereal and get more spell damage on board. Then play the Garrote. Since it costs 0, then the Sinister Strike. Then a Swindle, getting a Backstab and another Shadow Step. And then bounce back the Ethereal once again. Play the Ethereal and get more damage. Play the Prep. Use the Sinister Strike that we just got. Play another Prep. Play the next Garrote. And then from here we're just winning because we're going to draw into all of our bleeds. This is what I mean when I said you need high APM for this deck, since there's a lot of the time you'll just rope your opponent with the cards you draw off of Auctioneer. Alright, time for game 2 against Rogue. So this will either be questline or probably a mirror match. However, while play testing this deck, I don't think I ever ran into the questline. Honestly, that's a deck that should appear more often, that just doesn't. We're only going to keep the backstab, just so we have a early game removal. Like, I get questline Rogue isn't the strongest questline that came out in this set. However, it's still relatively strong as a control type of a deck. It honestly was probably the most shocking questline that I've played with. Since before I was playtesting with it, it was one of the cards that I honestly forgot was even in the set. And since they didn't play their quest line, it probably is. Next turn we're going to play Sketchy Information to get our Loan Shark out of the deck. And then they're going to draw 2 minions out of their deck. Rogue has a lot of nice draw power for combo decks right now. Sure, they lost Edwin as a big win condition for a Miracle style of deck. But given the cards that came out with this set and last set, there's a good reason why the card rotated out. Can you imagine getting Edwin when you had a bunch of cards like Loan Shark where you generate 0 cost coins in order to play more cards? How big that Edwin would get? They're probably thinking of what they can do with their Loan Shark. Sure, they can kill it and give us more coins, or they can leave it on board and just be a nuisance. And force us to use our own resources to kill it. They're going to backstab it. Honestly, I get how strong Secret Passage can be in a rogue deck like this. However, most of the time it just kind of feels wonky to use. We're just going to prep our Book of Shadows, just so we can get a few cards out of our deck, thus making it quicker for us to draw our entire deck off of Auctioneer. And they're going to play their own Loan Shark. And kill ours. Now we're going to get into the situation where it's kind of awkward with a full hand, but we can just start drawing into our cards. And hopefully combo off this turn. Drawing into the second Auctioneer. And backstabbing our first Auctioneer, which is something that I don't really necessarily want to do. Just gonna draw a bunch more cards. And play a Sinister Strike. Since we can't guarantee any more draw cards this turn. However, next turn we should be able to finish them off. Because honestly, in this matchup, it's whoever draws their cards better. We should actually be able to discount most of our hand due to the fact that we have an Octopot in our hand. So it might take us 2 turns instead of 1 turn to kill them. Which runs the risk of them being able to draw into their combo cards, but they haven't discounted anything in their hand yet, so I'm not too worried about it. And then they're going to play their own Cloak of Shadows. Alright, this is where it can get real interesting. Going to play the sketchy information, draw the second Loan Shark, and get the 2 coins. Since we have the Garrotes in our hand and everything else, next turn we can literally just combo off and not worry about anything. Going to Shadow Step the Ethereal back into our hand. Just so we have guaranteed spell damage next turn. And play 1 Sinister Strike so we don't mill a card that we might need. However, looking at our hand, we probably didn't even need to do that. And here they're going to make a last-ditch effort in order to try to combo off. But I don't think they have enough mana or the resources to discount the cards in their hand to do so. And here they're just going to give us another coin, which is great. We lose a prize plunderer. And now we can just buff the Auctioneer a bit. Play the Garrote. Play the second Garrote. And then just the coins. And we win. coins actually allowed us to pull off the combo a lot faster than if we didn't have the coins, which is great. Alright, now that we're through the games, let's discuss how well the deck did and why I built the deck the way I did. The deck performed relatively well and is definitely a type of deck that gets better with more and more practice. Miracle style decks are one of my favorite style of decks in Hearthstone and have always been since I started playing the game. So I'm always happy to find one that feels fun to play and is relatively worth playing. However, if you're expecting results really quickly with this deck, this isn't the deck that you would want to try out. You're going to first have to learn how to play the deck properly, and on top of that, be able to... The deck also requires high APM, where there are times where you're comboing off into your rope, and you're still having a bunch of cards to play, and you're just rushing to get all the cards necessary to perform the OTK in one turn. But that's something you have to deal with this style of deck, especially with the way I decided to build the deck. I know a lot of people are using Field Contact and other cards in order to trigger the Octobots, but I decided to go with the Loan Sharks and the Gadget Sands Auctioneers just because I was more comfortable with using cards that generate coins instead of relying on the fact I might not always have a battle cry that would be active on a turn. And Field Contacts are definitely a card where they're going to get killed within one turn, and if you had no way to easily discount them, you kind of screw yourself over by playing them instead. This way, you're just relying on Gadget Sand Auctioneer. Sure, it's a high cost card, but you make up for the fact that you generate a bunch of coins off of Loan Shark. So you don't have to worry about discounting a bunch of cards in your hand with Octobot, and you can be a bit more sloppy with your individual Octobots, or not even need the Octobots for a big push turn. And because we're relying on Gadget Sand, which is a higher cost card, we're also running one Cloak of Shadows in order to stall out our opponent for one turn, because most of the time, if you can't get the combo off in one turn because you were too slow with your reactions of playing cards or some other reason, Cloak of Shadows will usually allow you to survive an extra turn and thus finish your combo on the second turn. Now, for cards that felt kind of awkward in the deck, I would say Secret Passage and Foxy Fraud are the two cards most in question. For Secret Passage, it definitely is a card that I expected to automatically cast the Garrotes when you drew into them. However, you have to spend the individual mana to trigger each individual bleed when you draw them off of Secret Passage, which is not how I expected it to work, but it is what it is, and I kept it in the deck because it sometimes allowed you to cycle into cards that draw you more cards, such as Shroud of Concealment or Sketchy Information, thus allowing you to combo off even harder the next following turn, or even a Shadow Step in order to bounce back a ethereal. Now for the other card that felt awkward, Foxy Fraud, it's just because you run a low amount of combo cards in the deck that most of the time it's just kind of dead. You're running it so you can combo off with Swindle, which isn't always a bad choice in early mulligans. If you can see both Swindle and Foxy Fraud, most of the time you're going to have a pretty good head start in the game. However, Fraud just felt bad when you were drawing into it during your combo turns, since it's a 2-cost card and it would just clog up the hand. I don't know what you would replace it with. Maybe a Wicked Stab, so you could have more face damage in a turn. But besides that, I can't think of anything else. Which gets me into the reason why I didn't run Wicked Stab. It's because I didn't want to run a 2-cost spell that I would have to discount in order for it to be a 1-cost spell on like turn 5, which only did 1 extra damage over Sinister Strike. And thus Sinister Strike was just better overall. Sure, this could target some minions, but most of the time with this deck you just want to do face damage. there's no reason to clear out a minion, especially using a card that can win you the game. Overall, my thoughts of the deck is if you want a challenge and you like the Miracle playstyle, something that I definitely do enjoy, build this deck. It's relatively cheap. It doesn't require any legendaries. There's only a few epic cards and no legendaries. So if you just want a cheap deck, this is definitely one that you could do. And most of these cards are ones that see play in other rogue decks, so it's not really that big of a deal. That being said, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, it helps me out. And until next time, bye bye.